On this cross, these two gentlemen, you see, had been sentenced to 13 times 3 lashes of a cat of 9 tails. Now, a cat of 9 tails wasn't a measly piece of leather like this. A cat of 9 tails was 9 such pieces, conveniently studded with broken glass and rusty nails for extra effect. 13 times 3, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to have to help me count. I'm notoriously bad at math. Ladies and gentlemen, the Edinburgh mob, that's you folks in case you hadn't guessed, would come to witness this kind of torture and were notoriously ghoulish. Just like you, they like to see other people suffer. So as you count, ladies and gentlemen, a bit of cheering for blood wouldn't go astray. Are we ready? You ready, boys? And a 1, and a 2, and a 3, and a 4, and a 5, and a 6, and a 7, and an 8, and a 9, and a 10, and 11, 12, and the magic 13. By this point, ladies and gentlemen, their clothes would be shreds and tatters along their backs. The blood would be starting to run down their legs. Then, a further 13 lashes, ladies and gentlemen, for good measure, at which point bits of their ribs would be starting to show through their backs, and they'd be half faint from the pain. Then an extra 13 lashes for extra good measure. These two gentlemen would be pretty much unconscious. Blood would be pooling at their feet, and the dogs in the crowd would be running forward to lift it up. But I'm afraid they're not going to be with you for much longer because, ladies and gentlemen, these two Englishmen were sentenced to further punishment. This gentleman's ears were nailed to the wooden door of the cross behind him. Then, for good measure, they grabbed him by the elbows, pulled him forward, leaving most of his ears behind on the cross. Just to be 100% sure he never heard again, we put a knife through both eardrums. You've been very brave, so you may stand down. Thank you, sir. That's all of us safely in. Welcome, folks, to underground Edinburgh. Take a deep breath and absorb the lovely atmosphere and think you are now standing in the most haunted place in Britain. I've already explained to you, ladies and gentlemen, this area is more than 200 years old. It was originally built as storage and workshops for the businesses on the bridge above. But they built it so poorly, it leaked so much with damp, and was such a foul place to work and die, that people soon gave up. Then more illegitimate businesses moved in. This was the notorious haunt of illegal taverns, drinking dens, gambling pits, cockfighting rings, dodgy gentlemen's clubs, prostitution, and all sorts of dark, seedy side of Edinburgh's underworld. In the late 18th and early 19th century, this is where you would come for dark entertainments in town. Then in the mid-19th century, ladies and gentlemen, when the poverty in this part of central Edinburgh was so bad, people were actually driven desperate enough to live in these vaults for a short time. It seems this history of misery, sorrow, poverty and despair has left a certain atmosphere on the vaults. It certainly seems to have left some of its characters behind. The vaults were then nearly abandoned for nearly 100 years, ladies and gentlemen, until the early 1990s. We actually opened and excavated this area of vaults. intending to use them simply as a good atmospheric location for good classic ghost stories, that's all. Known as the tavern room. We know that down here an illegal drinking den and an illicit whiskey still used to operate in the 1820s. Ladies and gentlemen, down here you can experience many different forms of the supernatural. Whatever you believe ghosts to be, there are several ways they can be experienced. There are said to be both residual and interactive ghosts, and you will be glad to know we have both in these vaults. Ghosts can be heard. The classic, of course, is the footsteps in an empty corridor. That corridor is particularly bad. There are also the whispers, the moans, the breathing, the mumbling, the shouts, and screams that tend to pop out of the blue down here. Ladies and gentlemen, you can also feel ghosts. Feeling a ghost or a ghostly presence of the other world can be as simple as having the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, that uneasy feeling that you're being watched, which is very, very common down here. To actually feeling a cold wet hand slip into yours when there's no one standing beside you. Some of our ghosts even get interactive and tug on your coattails. One particularly likes to throw stones at you, or rather at me, which is why I don't stand in that doorway anymore when I tell this part of the story of the vaults. Ladies and gentlemen, you can also see ghosts, of course. Much rarer, in fact. They can be experienced as anything such as a shadow moving across the wall when everyone in a room is still, to orbs of light and strange light phenomena quite often captured on camera, to fully fledged apparitions. Grey mists and faces have occasionally been seen, and whole figures very rarely. However, they do tend, funnily enough, to turn up on camera quite often. It seems, ladies and gentlemen, that sometimes our cameras in this day and age can pick up on things our naked eye cannot. People have often taken a photograph of an empty doorway or a corner of the room they've heard a story about. And when they get home and develop them or put them on the computer, they find ghostly presences appearing on film. We have quite some few sent to us, some terrifyingly convincing, others a little bit more dubious. So snap away, we're always after more. You never know what you might capture. Ladies and gentlemen, as you journey around the vaults this evening, you may think all is quiet. You may think that you hear nothing but the hum of the generator. It may be that you're being watched the entire time. You're about to enter the corridor known as the Watcher's Corridor, because there is a malevolent male presence in these vaults that does exactly that, watches our groups. He's very territorial, he's very defensive, and he makes no bones about not liking us being down here. He's been seen and very often heard in all rooms of the vaults but one. If your hairs on the back of your neck stand up, do let me know. Follow me.
Okay, we're going to go this way.
I reckon when I said you should be, it's against the law.
There we are. Freshly lit.
Ooh, Edinburgh. total, ¿eh? Voy a hacerlo por partes.
1806, Robert the Bruce was enthroned as King of Scots at Scone in Perthshire. There he was crowned with a circlet of gold by Isabella, Countess of Buchan. Legend tells that the gold from Bruce's single circlet
We were doing last night, Sarah. Keep it clean. Lies! 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 You were seen only last night, prancing and dancing round a huge pagan bonfire, wearing nothing but a wicked smile, and the buff where you're jingly-jangly bits flapping around everywhere. They were heard singing in an unholy way, and I quote, "Beelzebub, Beelzebub, bring me a man! Bring me..."
Oh, cool! I've never seen that again before.
The street corner. This is one of the oldest independently owned stores in the whole of Britain. Three of her male children were kings of Scotland. That is Edgar, David, and Alexander. Spire of the former St. John's Church, the Crown Tower of St. Giles, the Balmoral Hotel clock. A group of required was said to have denuded the forests of Fife. When the ship was launched in the early years of the 16th century, it was the largest warship in the world on the 11th of January, 1954. Her overall length is 412 miles, before being decommissioned on the 11th of December, 1997.
Hello.
Where are we today?
Right here. Hello.
Outside view. Shall I show the cockroaches?
Yep.
Two coming up.
Where? Getting scared.
Where they have a siesta?
Smile, Laura. Bit camel camera.
just started, what are you doing? You're breaking the car for. I did say it wasn't my fault, but when you got back tonight, don't blame me.
Nice.
It would have to be the car that you're in as well, wouldn't it?
The bar next to you.
How many spares have we got today?
Instead of giving it all that, give a bloody hand.
No, I like looking at you two. Now, this is what you don't do when you're walking with...
As I said, it will be a long, long time before the islands were officially discovered. And this area in particular, in the past, was actually a big one-sea settlement. I mean, a lot of the caves have eroded away over the last few centuries, but there was a lot of them in this area. Because just these little white dots you can see in the mountains there, just up above there, there's half a one-sea cemetery left up there. But as you can probably see with the towels and that hanging out there, and the car parked there, at this moment in time there is still actually over 220 habitised caves on this island present day. People are still living in the caves, and that's actually one of them there. But as you can probably see, it's not quite as barbaric as just living in a hole in a rock, because you can kind of see what they're doing. They actually open up the cave entrances themselves, and they're actually cementing stone buildings onto the front of the caves. Two main reasons, obviously to make it a bit more secure and put doors and windows and... that does actually mean the Lake of the Children. This is one of 31 natural lakes we have here on the island, but this is one of the most beautiful ones that we have here. Not all as big as this, but 31 lakes altogether. If you notice away at the end though, there is dams even on all the lakes. Now they are not dams, they are not reservoirs, they are natural lakes, but dams have just been added in over the last 10-15 years to try and hold the water longer when it did rain. However, I was telling you about winter that we had just passed, but just to explain to you better. Standing here, looking down there, obviously you can see all the water. However, if you've been standing on this island on the 8th of December, just at the end of last year, in this exact same spot, looking down there, you'd have seen blue sky and not a single drop of water down there at all. Because up until that point, we'd come through about 2.5 years on this island of drought, maybe about 1.5 inches of rainfall in 2.5 years. Very, very good for the tourists, especially in the winter months, but very, very bad for the locals.
Well, that holds a lot of water, that one, doesn't it? It's raining!
I'm supposed to roll.
I'm bloody freezing!
What's the camera?
Defend me! Is there anybody else in her car with you?